My father lies on a hospital bed, barely breathing as he asks to see my husband once more. However, my husband's phone is turned off that day. I hurry to his company to look for him, but his secretary stops me and tells me there's a company policy that says they don't allow me and dogs to enter. I kneel before the building and beg for help, but someone records me and twists the truth. Later, I watch the video and see Eugene Fort carrying his true love, who's cut her finger, into the car. My father ultimately dies without seeing Eugene. I stay up all night to handle the wake and funeral. The following day, I finally receive a call from Eugene. He sounds impatient as he says, "Come to the hospital. Ivy needs help." I was negotiating a huge business deal with a prospective client when I received the hospital's call. If I could score this deal, Castor Group would stand a better chance of turning the tables. However, from the conversation, the client made his attitude clear to me. If not for the fact that I was Eugene Fort's wife, he wouldn't have given me the time of day. That wasn't the most pressing matter, though. I panicked when I heard what the doctor told me over the phone and hurried off, not even remembering to apologize to the client before leaving. I crouched by Dad's bedside, my face covered in tears as I watched him speak with difficulty. "I won't ask for anything else. All I hope is that you and Eugene are happy together." He looked behind me. "Where is he?" I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. "He's busy at work. I'll call him right now." The call connected but was rejected almost immediately. I tried again several times, but nothing changed. Eugene and I had a business marriage alliance, but everyone knew I'd liked him since childhood. He, however, only had eyes for Ivy Green. Just as I thought my blatant crush on him would ultimately fail, he'd come to me and told me Ivy had leukemia. Coincidentally, my bone marrow was a match for hers. So, we'd come to an agreement. He would give me the title of his wife and allow me to enjoy the perks that came with it, which I had for the past 3 years. In exchange, I would become a walking bone marrow donor and be on standby to save Ivy's life. Over the years, Eugene and I had always pretended to be a loving couple before Dad. I didn't expect everything to come crashing down at this moment. I met Dad's gaze and lied through my teeth. "Eugene's having a meeting, Dad. I'll bring him to you." Dad looked hesitant as he stared listlessly at the ceiling. Ultimately, he nodded. "Okay." When I hurried to Eugene's company, his secretary, Michael Lowry, barred me from entering. Michael raised an eyebrow before signaling behind him. Then, he smiled and said, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Fort. You have no permission to enter the building." The trained bodyguards behind him surrounded me. I tried to push them away so I could get past them, but they didn't budge. I was on the verge of tears as I pleaded, "I have an emergency, Mr. Lowry. My father." "I'm sorry. Mr. Fort said that you're not allowed inside regardless of the reason." Michael pulled out a card from behind him and read its contents. "Mrs. Fort and dogs are not allowed entry." The passersby who heard that burst into laughter, but I couldn't care less about them. I cried, "I'm not lying this time, Mr. Lowry. My father is really in trouble." Michael cut me off. "The last time you used this excuse, you caused us to lose half a year's pay, Mrs. Fort. This time, we won't let you in, no matter what. Who knows whether we'll still have jobs if we do?" One of the bodyguards chimed in. "Yeah, we have families to feed. Please stop making things hard for us." I was taken aback by their words, unsure how to react. I hadn't been lying the last time, though. At the time, Dad had a cerebral hemorrhage and fell down the staircase. Fortunately, a maid had discovered him soon enough and called an ambulance. After Dad was taken to the hospital, the doctors told me to be ready to say goodbye. That had scared the living daylights out of me. Still, I'd been worried about Eugene missing out on seeing Dad one last time. Upon consideration, I'd gone to his company for the first time to look for him. Fortunately, Dad had pulled through and survived the ordeal. I had no idea Eugene would vent his anger and frustration on Michael and the bodyguards. If they'd told me about the outcome of them letting me into the building, I would have made things up to them. I was about to refute Michael and the bodyguard when my phone vibrated. "Ms. Castor, your father's situation is looking dire." I didn't hear the rest of the doctor's sentence. My knees gave out, and I fell to the ground. I grabbed Michael's sleeve as if it was my last hope. "I don't have to go inside. Can you pass the message to Eugene, please?" He remained steadfast. "Mrs. Fort, no one will believe you once you've done similar things more than once." I knew there was no point trying to reason with him. He wouldn't believe me anymore. So, I kneeled before him and begged him, "Please, Mr. Lowry." I'd never groveled at someone's feet in my life. A strong wave of humiliation washed over me, stabbing me like knives. Ultimately, Michael gave in. My panic was slightly alleviated as I watched him enter the building. He soon returned, looking apologetic. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Fort has just left the building." I'm not sure where he was headed. At that moment, I felt like the air around me had frozen. Something seemed lodged in my throat, and my fingers started trembling. Then, my phone rang again. It was a call from Dad's attending physician. This time, he didn't sound anxious anymore. Instead, he sounded calmer than he'd ever been since Dad had fallen sick. "Your father has just passed away, Ms. Castor. My condolences." I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I trembled uncontrollably, and my brain stopped working. Dad's funeral was a simple affair. Only a few of his close friends attended the service. The next day, the dust settled. Eugene hadn't called me even once throughout the whole thing. I crouched before Dad's gravestone and placed flowers there. I hoped beyond hope that this was a dream. At least I wouldn't be in so much pain once I woke up. My heart died along with Dad. My love for Eugene turned to ashes. Just then, my phone rang with a notification. Ivy had sent me a link and a mocking message. What an interesting video. I sat on a step and clicked on the link with a trembling finger. The video loaded and started playing. The woman in the video was on her knees as she clutched the sleeve of the suited man before her. After a brief conversation, the woman suddenly groveled at the man's feet. The video seemed to have been zoomed in a lot, so the image was rather blurry. It had probably been taken from a distance. Despite the blurriness, I immediately recognized the woman to be myself. The video had been uploaded online, and the comments were negative. Why am I being shown this video? Do you think I'm a piece of trash who watches everything and anything? What the hell is that woman doing? What's wrong with her? Is this part of a film crew shooting? Damn, look at that woman go. I could do it, too. Wait, you guys don't know the story? This woman has a crush on that man and chased him all the way to his workplace. What? Isn't that just sexual harassment? Why hasn't anyone called the cops on her? She can't get away with these things just because she's a woman. Don't you guys think she looks familiar? Is her last name Castor or something? You're talking about Jade Castor, right? Isn't she married? Who's the guy in the video? Are you dumb? Doesn't it clearly state in the video that he's a secretary? So, this chick is fooling around with a secretary when she has a CEO for a husband? What is wrong with this world? I didn't dare to continue reading. The rest of the comments would only be worse. Chills ran down my spine, and my legs felt like they'd been filled with lead. The video continued playing, and the sounds made me feel like they were curses from hell. Despair washed over me. I shut my eyes, trying hard to calm myself. However, I only felt worse. The video cut off when my phone rang. I slowly opened my eyes to see Eugene calling. I'd saved his number as Honey. It seemed particularly mocking now. When I answered, he taunted me. I didn't expect you to be involved with my secretary. You've got some nerve. I didn't argue or try to refute him. Instead, I quietly waited for him to continue. He didn't say anything for a long while, though. After a long silence, I looked up at the sky and said softly, "Dad's dead, Eugene." He snorted. "How many times are you going to lie to me, Jade? Aren't you tired of that yet?" There was some noise on his end. Then, his tone turned impatient. "I'll let you off the hook for the video for now. I'll give you 30 minutes to come to the hospital. Ivy needs help." He hung up without giving me the chance to say anything. I chuckled bitterly. If Ivy really was fighting for her life on the operating table, how could she have sent me the link to the video? My phone screen showed the paused video now that the call was over. That was when I saw Eugene's car in a corner of the video. I dragged the playback bar to see Eugene carrying Ivy out from the side gate and hurrying to his car while I begged Michael. She clutched her hand to her chest. She looked like she was heavily injured. I searched for other angles of the video before discovering that she'd only sliced her finger while cutting fruits. It turned out that to Eugene, I really meant nothing compared to Ivy. I locked my phone, tucked it away, and turned to head somewhere else. However, Michael and a few men stood in my way before I could even leave the cemetery. He looked a little worse for the wear. There were even bruises on his cheeks. He held out a hand to stop me from leaving. "Mr. Fort sent us to pick you up, Mrs. Fort." I backed away warily. "What? Are you guys going to force me to go to the hospital if I refuse to head there myself?"